Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's with enormous pleasure that I welcome you all to our first virtual RCVS Honours and Awards evening, our annual opportunity to celebrate the achievements of some truly remarkable members and associates of the veterinary professions. My name is Neil Connell and I'm the Senior Vice President of the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons. This event, like our first online AGM in July, is certainly taking place under rather different circumstances than usual. So I should very much like to thank you for taking the trouble to join us this evening. Under normal circumstances, I would have presented our honours and awards at Royal College Day in London in July, while still being RCVS President. But this, of course, was not possible this year. I should like to thank therefore, Mandisa Green, our new RCVS President, for allowing me this last official duty during what is now her presidential year. It's a tremendous honour to make these formal presentations this evening. Of course, one benefit to hosting a virtual event is the fact that we can reach a much larger number. And I'm delighted to say that over 1,400 of you have registered to watch this live event tonight. This is possibly the closest I will ever get to experiencing the pyramid stage at Glastonbury. So, whilst our online event this evening can't be the same as our usual formal awards ceremony, we have worked hard to make it as special as possible for all our award winners and as interesting and engaging for all our viewers. And I'm afraid, however, you'll need to arrange the refreshments yourself, whether that's a nice cup of tea or something a little more celebratory. So over the next hour or so, we will be presenting RCVS diplomas to two veterinary surgeons who have achieved a high standard of academic and professional expertise in their chosen subject. And our Mind Matters initiative will be awarding two of its Sarah Brown Mental Health Research grants. Our charity partner, RCVS Knowledge, has a number of its own awards that reflect its mission to improve the quality of veterinary care by advancing the use of evidence-based veterinary medicine and inspiring quality improvement. These will be presented by our outgoing Chair of Trustees, Jackie Molyneux. And then we will formally present 7 of our highest honours, which include 3 honorary associateships, our Impact and Inspiration Awards, and finally the RCVS Queen's Medal. I'm very much looking forward to hearing from some of our award recipients with a few words they've prepared earlier, and to making an exciting announcement about our awards for next year. To round off our evening, I shall be delighted to introduce you to our guest speaker, Professor David Knott, OBE, who will be delivering a live talk entitled Resilience in the Face of Fear and Uncertainty, Reflections from a Frontline Doctor. I'll be talking more about David's extraordinary career a little later, but I should add that technology permitting, he will also be available to answer your questions following his talk as well. It's great to have you with us tonight, David. Welcome and thank you for joining us. So, without further ado, I will ask our Chief Executive, Lizzie Lockett, to get the proceedings underway.
Thank you very much, Neil, and good evening, everybody. Our programme tonight begins with a presentation of 2 RCVS diplomas. The RCVS diploma is a high-level qualification to indicate that the holder has achieved a high standard of academic and professional expertise, as proven by submission of a research dissertation and by passing both written and practical examinations in their chosen subject.
Our 2 recipients this evening will know as well as anyone what a significant accomplishment it is to gain an RCVS diploma, not least in the years of effort it requires. What they might not know, however, is that their achievements mark another point in the college's long history. Following a council decision in 2012 to converge our diplomas with the equivalent European ones, these are actually the last 2 RCVS diplomas that we will ever award. This will be the last time. So it is with an extra sense of occasion that I now formally award an RCVS diploma in veterinary cardiology to Gavin Macaulay, MRCVS. Congratulations, Gavin. And an RCVS Diploma in Equine Internal Medicine to Jessica Spanton, MRCVS. Congratulations, Jessica.
We now turn to the conferral of awards by our charity partner, RCVS Knowledge, whose mission it is to advance the quality of veterinary care for the benefit of animals, the public and society. I'm very pleased to welcome to the virtual stage Dr. Jackie Molyneux, our outgoing Chair of Trustees, to make these presentations.
Thank you very much, Lizzie, and good evening to everyone. It's great to be here this evening on behalf of RCVS Knowledge Trustees and the team.
The first Knowledge Award this evening, the Veterinary Evidence Student Award, recognises the capability of undergraduate students to produce high-quality research. All award submissions are subject to the usual standards and peer review process employed by Veterinary Evidence, RCVS Knowledge's open access peer-reviewed journal. The submissions for this year's awards were of a high standard, with all deemed suitable for publication in the journal. But I'm pleased to announce that the Veterinary Evidence Student Award 2020 has been won by Carla Husband, Abby Macmillan, and Laura Sweeney.
Carla, Abby and Lauren all studied veterinary nursing at the University of Bristol. Their winning knowledge summary was an assessment of the impact of educational intervention on hand hygiene compliance. The team highlighted the paucity of evidence regarding the impact of educational interventions on hand hygiene compliance in small animal environments, which we all appreciate is a highly relevant topic during the current COVID-19 pandemic. They also called for more research to be carried out to support compliance in the veterinary professions. Peter Cockcroft, recent editor-in-chief of Veterinary Evidence Journal, and Chris Gush, Executive Director of RCVS Knowledge, commended the award winners on their outstanding achievement and their valuable contribution to the evidence base. Carla, Abby, I'm delighted to formally present you with this year's Veterinary Evidence Student Award. Well done.
Congratulations to all three of you. The RCVS Knowledge Awards were introduced to celebrate the achievement of teams and individuals who've driven continuous quality improvement in their practices. Quality improvement, or QI, can be described as the combined and unceasing efforts of everyone to make the changes that will lead to better patient outcomes, or health, better system performance, that is care, and better professional development, i.e. learning. This year, RCVS Knowledge are presenting 3 practice teams with the Champion Practice Award and 1 individual with the Knowledge Champion Award. The winners of the first Champion Practice Award are Vale Vets in Portishead.
Vale Vets has been awarded Champion Practice for their introduction and continuation of QI initiatives that help the team to work as one. They run a number to improve patient care, including hand hygiene audit and post-operative complication audit, in which they excelled. The team actively used national benchmarking to understand the level of care that they provide. Their QI work has resulted in interventions such as support for all team members to be more involved in QI, the use of quiet shifts for data collection, and updated local practice guidelines and checklists. The Vale Vets team are passionate about continually improving their practices standards, as well as ensuring their guidelines reflect the current, and they demonstrate a whole practice culture towards continuous improvements. Congratulations to all the team at Vale Vets, as I hereby present you with your Knowledge Champion Practice.
Congratulations everybody at Vale Vets. The second Champion Practice Award goes to the Small Animal Theatre team at the former Animal Health Trust.
The Small Animal team, who formerly worked at the Animal Health Trust, have received a Champion Practice Award for their sustained training and use of a surgical safety checklist, which they made a standard part of theatre practice and improved safety number of patients. Since introducing a surgical safety checklist in 2008, the team used it for every procedure, and it was adapted for different so that it could be used across the whole hospital. Its use improved team unity and communication. It also led to serious and minor surgical errors, compliance in swab and instrument counts, and a greater awareness of a safety culture. In addition, the team made their checklists freely available online to benefit the professions. Formally accepting the Practice Champion Award this evening are James Gasson and Helen Silverman, spearheaded and maintained the campaign. Congratulations to you and all who worked with you to achieve this. Well done.
Fantastic. And finally, the third Champion Practice Award goes to PDSA.
The PDSA have received a Champion Award for their national auditing in 3 main areas. Their cruciate surgery audit identified that the procedure led to a 90 to 95% return to function when compared to alternate procedures. The team made a client phone call after surgery, which led to 83% of patients now returning for a checkup. They identified that 85% of practices were using updated guidelines and highlighted practices that required further guidance and support. The audit demonstrated that the guidelines had improved patient. The team's incident reporting audit identified key areas at risk of incidences occurring. The charity then introduced guidelines and checklists to reduce the risk of errors in areas that required further support. The PDSA has showcased improvements and achievements across a number of practices, improving and client. My congratulations to all the team at PDSA as we present them this evening with our final Champion Practice Award. Well done.
And now the individual winner of the Knowledge Champion Award 2020 is Louise Northway, RVN.
Louise Northway of Wendover Heights Veterinary Centre, and widely known as Lou the Vet Nurse on her social media channels, is our individual winner for the 2nd year running. Louise champions quality improvement and evidence-based veterinary medicine through her website and social, making QI approachable and achievable. Her passion for auditing using the National Audit for Small Animal Neutering led her to identify complication rates for dog and cat neutering procedures in her practice. Using team discussion and evidence-based research, Louise organised infection control training, devised new guidelines for clipper use and skin preparation, and changed post-operative owner advice to include the use of bodysuits. These interventions led complication rates to fall by half. Louise's audit is ongoing and monitors complication rates to keep them well below the national benchmark. Her dedication and ability to engage the entire team has created a culture where quality improvement is part of everyday practice. Louise, I'm delighted this evening to present you with a 2nd Knowledge Champion Award. Congratulations to you.
Well done, Lou. We now come to the last RCVS Knowledge Award of the evening, which is also a first. I'm delighted to introduce the inaugural Plowright Prize, a new award made in memory of Walter and Dorothy Plowright. As I'm sure you know, Walter Plowright was widely regarded as one of the world's most eminent veterinary virologists, whose development of a tissue culture vaccine represented a key milestone in efforts to eradicate rinderpest. This new biennial award, which brings £75,000 of research funding, recognises an individual working in Europe or the Commonwealth who has made a significant impact on the control, management and eradication of infectious diseases of animals.
It is with great pleasure that I can announce that the Plowright Prize to 2020 is awarded to Professor William Ivan Morrison of the Roslin Institute at the University of Edinburgh. Professor Morrison's contribution to the field of infectious diseases is substantial and wide-ranging. Seminal studies conducted by his laboratory into Filaria parva, East Coast fever, a devastating disease affecting cattle in Africa, provided the scientific rationale and intellectual framework for the search for a T-cell inducing vaccine. This work provides critical understanding, acting as the foundation for the design and development of novel vaccines. Professor Morris has collaborated with researchers on a wide range of other pathogens that cause a broad spectrum of diseases. In the course of his research, he has generated a considerable body of data, which has been of great value to the research community. Professor Morris will use the Plowright Prize funding to advance his research into creating a cost-effective vaccine for fever, which places a major economic burden on livestock farmers across sub-Saharan Africa. Professor Morris, your career has brought significant animal, humanitarian, and economic benefits, and your research plans promise to build on these achievements, making you a commendable recipient of the inaugural Plowright Prize. Congratulations.
And now here is Professor Morrison himself with a few words about his award.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to first express my thanks to the Royal College for the award of this prestigious prize. It is indeed an honour to receive a prize awarded in memory of Walter Plowright. I was fortunate enough to get to know Walter Plowright in the 1990s. It is perhaps difficult to appreciate now this challenging situation in which he was working. So it was quite extraordinary how successful he was in that environment in developing a vaccine against rinderpest, which eventually was used for global eradication of that devastating disease. My own somewhat more modest research career also was kick-started in Africa. Following completion of a PhD in Glasgow, I took up a position in Kenya, and there I quickly became interested in a disease of cattle known as East Coast fever. My initial work aimed to try and understand the immune responses involved in conferring immunity to the parasite, with the, I guess, ultimate aim of trying to exploit this for developing a vaccine. On returning to the UK, I continued this line of work, and indeed this theme of research remained a major topic of my activities for the rest of my career. I would particularly like to acknowledge my colleagues in Edinburgh, not only for those who have actually contributed to my research activities, recent research activities, but also to those who have nominated me for this prize. And finally, I would just like to thank my wife for her patient support throughout my research career. So in conclusion, I would just like to thank again the Royal College for this award. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Morrison. I think that's a great first award winner, and I'm sure we will have others following in his footsteps that are. So that concludes the presentation of the RCVS Knowledge Awards this evening. So on behalf of my fellow trustees and the Knowledge team, I would like to thank the RCVS for inviting us here this evening. I would also like to add how pleasing it is to see evidence-based medicine being used to such valuable effect by veterinary professionals at all stages of their careers and in such a variety of contexts, which is something that we champion and which underpins our work at RCVS Knowledge. I will now hand back to Niall and Lizzie. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jackie. Fantastic award winners. We move now to present the Sarah Brown Mental Health Research Grants, which were founded last year in memory of our RCVS Council colleague and friend, Sarah Brown, who sadly lost her life in 2017. These grants are awarded by our Mind Matter initiative, of which Lizzie is the director, so I will invite her to make the formal presentations.
I'm proud to announce that this year we'll be awarding two £20,000 grants to two very important research projects in Sarah's honour. The judging panel had a tough call in deciding who would receive this year's grants, as there were many outstanding proposals. But the two we chose stood out because they are examining issues, racism and moral injury respectively, that we know exist, but which, as of yet, we don't have a concrete evidence base for. They are solutions-focused projects and will look at what interventions can be put in place to help people whose mental health is impacted by these issues. I'm delighted to say that we've awarded the first grant to Dr. Victoria Crossley of the Royal Veterinary College and Navaratnam Parthiban of the British Veterinary Ethnicity and Diversity Society. They are leading a joint research project entitled Experiences of Racism and its Impacts on Mental Wellbeing in Black, Asian and Minority Ethnic People Working and Studying in the UK Veterinary Profession. As well as gathering information about experiences of racism and their impact on the mental health of Black, Asian and minority ethnic veterinary professionals, the project will also determine what individuals from these communities think could and should be done to tackle racism in the veterinary professions. The project will also gather the evidence to help design appropriate interventions for those whose mental health and well-being is impacted by racism and discrimination. Very, very timely project. Congratulations to Victoria and Thebe. The second project is being conducted by a team from King's College London, led by Professor Neil Greenberg, Dr. Dominic Murphy, and Dr. Victoria Williamson. They will be looking at the experiences of moral injury in veterinarians and the impact that this has on mental health and well-being. The research will seek to understand the types of moral injuries veterinary professionals might encounter, their prevalence, the perceptions amongst professionals around how these moral injuries come about, and what support is needed when they occur. It is hoped that the research will ultimately help the development of tailored psychological treatments for veterinary professionals who experience moral injury. Congratulations, Neil, Dominic, and Victoria.
I should like to congratulate both teams on their successful and hugely important applications, and I very much look forward to hearing about the results of their work in due course. Before we move on, though, I should just like to share with you a message from Sarah's mum Fiona and sister Sophie, which they very kindly sent us upon hearing of the successful grants this year. It is with great interest that we as a family follow the award of research grants by the RCVS. It is appropriate and timely that the subjects are racial discrimination and looking at issues where vets have to take action and decisions out with their moral code. Sarah would be proud to have her name associated with these areas, as she always looked at the wider picture and questioned the status quo. Thank you very much, Fiona and Sophie.
We turn now to the formal presentation of the college's flagship honours and awards. To start with this year, we are awarding 3 RCVS Honorary Associateships. Honorary Associateship of the College is a prestigious honour conferred upon a small number of non-members of the RCVS each year in recognition of their special contribution to the veterinary professions. We're keen to recognise and collaborate with a full range of individuals who contribute to the veterinary sphere. For example, scientists, lecturers, veterinary nurses, charity workers, farriers, farmers, and those involved in the commercial field. Our first honorary associate this evening is Professor Maureen Bain.
Based at the University of Glasgow, Maureen Bain is Professor of Comparative Anatomy and Histology and Dean of Learning and Teaching. Please join me in hearing a little more about Maureen's valuable work in teaching and research.
Over the last 26 years, Professor Maureen Bain has dedicated her professional life to extensive veterinary teaching and research. She has obtained several teaching awards, including the Best Preclinical Teacher Award for 7 consecutive years at the University of Glasgow. In the field of poultry science, Maureen has collaborated with engineers, molecular biologists and geneticists to conduct outstanding research on avian reproduction, and, in particular, on eggshell quality and strength, a topic on which she is an internationally recognized authority. Maureen's extraordinary research has helped the global poultry industry to develop molecular tools to improve selection for egg quality traits, and to understand and develop new commercial practices in breeding, nutrition, health and management of poultry.
Morning. I'm delighted now to formally welcome you as an Honorary Associate of the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons. Congratulations.
And here's a word or two from Maureen about what her award means to her.
Hi everyone. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Hayley Crosby-Durrani and her husband Zishan, who nominated me for this wonderful award. Hayley is a former student of mine who I remember most because of the gold Doc Marten boots that she used to wear to the vet ball each year. I was really jealous that she could get away with it and I couldn't. Hayley and I have kept touch over the years and I'm extremely proud of all of her achievements. As a basic scientist working with vets, both in teaching and in research, this award is particularly important to me, as it confirms acceptance into a professional body that I could only ever aspire to be being part of. For me, this award is the icing on the cake in a career which has spanned about 3 decades, where I've had nothing but fun. I've travelled the world and I've shared some amazing experiences, both as a veterinary educator with my students and also as a research scientist working closely with the poultry industry. So thank you all very, very much.
Maureen. Our second Honorary Associate tonight is Mike Flynn, MBE.
Mike Flynn joined the Scottish Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals in 1987 and is now its Chief Superintendent. Here's a little more about Mike's many years working in animal protection.
Throughout his 30-year career with the Scottish SPCA, Mike Flynn has worked alongside vets and vet nurses in animal welfare centres, looking after animals seized in the course of the Society's work, many of which need veterinary attention before being rehomed or to relieve further unnecessary suffering. He is fully supportive of the work of veterinary surgeons, not only in their key role as expert witnesses in prosecutions, but also in their fundamental value as frontline animal welfare educators of the public. To this end, Mike now chairs a veterinary working group to promote collaboration between the SSPCA and the veterinary profession, particularly over animal welfare education and the crucial role of expert witnesses.
Mike, I'm delighted to officially welcome you as an Honorary Associate of the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons. Congratulations and well done.
And here's Mike with a few words about his award, While Braving the Elements.
Superintendent Mike Flynn, Scottish SPCA. I'm really delighted that the brilliant Emma Callahan nominated me for this, which was supported by Ronnie Suter and Kathleen Robertson. It really is quite an amazing thing to be nominated for. I personally worked with vets for over 40 years, starting with a lovely guy, Walter McClellan, back in Edinburgh Zoo in 1978. And the amount of vets that I've learned from over the years has just been absolutely amazing. I'd like to say thanks to Ranald and Helen Monroe, Alistair Laurie, Harry Hayworth. They've all been instrumental in my career. It's been absolutely amazing. Previously I've been awarded an MBE for my services to animal welfare, but to get this from the Royal College is really, really touching and outstanding. I don't accept this just for myself. I think this is in recognition of the work that the SSPC does throughout Scotland every day of the year, working closely with vets. We couldn't work without them. It's an amazing organisation. I do hope that this will maybe strengthen a few bonds in the veterinary profession and maybe encourage more vets to get involved in the links group, which is all about non-accidental injury and the links between domestic violence and animal abuse. So thanks again very much, and I'm really, really honoured to receive this.
Thank you, Mike, showcasing the Scottish summer for us there. And our third and final Honorary Associate this evening is Professor Roberto Laragioni.
Roberto Laragione is Professor of Veterinary Microbiology and Pathology at the University of Surrey and Deputy Head of its School of Veterinary Medicine. Here's a little more about Roberto's distinguished work in veterinary science and education.
Professor Roberto Laragione's outstanding contribution to innovation in both veterinary science and veterinary education includes publication of over 150 peer-reviewed papers in veterinary microbiology and pathology. He has also made concrete contributions to real veterinary problems, including vaccine development against E. coli. Roberto has also been instrumental in shaping veterinary education. He has mentored over 25 PhD students and, in 2012, was appointed Associate Dean for Veterinary Strategy at the University of Surrey and tasked with leading its development. Since then, he has successfully helped to pioneer an innovative partnership approach to veterinary education, which remains a core part of the vision of the school, of which he is now Deputy Head.
Roberto, I am delighted to formally welcome you as an Honorary Associate of the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons. Congratulations and well done.
And here are a few words that Roberto shared with us about receiving his award.
Ladies, gentlemen, friends, colleagues and esteemed guests, it's an honour and privilege to receive this prestigious RCVS award and to be associated with the veterinary profession. Throughout my career, I've worked in the animal health sector alongside veterinary surgeons, veterinary nurses, veterinary students and scientists, and it's this collaborative working that has enabled me to progress my passion for veterinary research and education, with an ultimate aim of improving animal health and welfare, but not neglecting the human-animal bond and the close interaction between animals, humans and the environment. Over the past 25 years, my research has contributed to the improvement of animal health and welfare, and specifically through the development of vaccines for livestock species and a greater understanding of the pathobiology of zoonotic and endemic bacterial pathogens of livestock and companion animal species. My work has also extended into understanding the mechanism of antimicrobial resistance and developing novel alternatives to antibiotics, thus contributing to both animal, human and environmental health. The concept of One Health is one that has been at the centre of my research, and through my collaborations with the veterinary and medical professions, I hope to continue to enhance the profile of One Health and interdisciplinary working to improve animal and human health. I also hope that the innovative teaching platforms that I've helped to develop and my research will contribute widely to the training of a future generation of veterinary surgeons, nurses and scientists. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my colleagues, family and friends that have supported me throughout my career, and special thanks go to my nominator, Dr. Dan Horton, an outstanding veterinary surgeon and researcher in the field of infectious diseases, and a strong advocate for One Health concept. I look forward to continuing to work with the veterinary profession in the coming years to further improve animal health and welfare and develop innovation in veterinary education and research.
Thank you and congratulations again to Roberto. We now move on to the RCVS Impact Award. This award is for a veterinary surgeon or veterinary nurse who's recently made a considerable impact on the profession in general, animal health, welfare or public health. Such impact could have been made through any field of veterinary endeavour, including clinical practice, research, education or veterinary politics. We have two recipients of this award this evening, the first of whom is veterinary surgeon Dr. Rosie Alistair.
In nominating Rosie for this award, veterinary surgeon Ebony Escalona described her as being a constant and caring reminder that support, adaptations and development have a tangible impact on improving mental health in the veterinary profession. Here's a short video story about Rosie's work in the field of veterinary mental health.
Dr. Rosie Alistair is widely respected as one of the world's leading experts in veterinary mental health, and her impact spans undergraduates, early career and senior vets, veterinary nurses, the workplace, and the RCVS. Her empathy, connection, authority and professionalism have resulted in a challenge to the status quo. And as a result of her work, veterinary well-being has become a key topic for open discussion. As a manager of the Vet Life Helpline, Rosie has been instrumental in growing the service to a position where it currently handles over 3,000 contacts each year. Many of our colleagues are alive today because of Rosie's work.
In support of Rosie's nomination for this award, veterinary surgeon Katrina Curtis said, "In her relentless pursuit to advance the veterinary professions from a mental and emotional health perspective, Rosie has advanced her knowledge and solution-based approach. I know personally she saves and transforms lives at an individual and professional population level through being involved at every touch point. In my view, she is unrivaled." Rosie, I am delighted today to present you with the RCVS Impact Award. Many congratulations and well deserved.
Yes, well done, Rosie. That's fantastic. And here are a few thoughts from her about her award and her work.
Hello, and thank you to the RCVS and those who nominated me for the Impact Award. Over the 15 years I've been part of the work to support veterinary mental health and in suicide prevention, we have seen real change. Mental health is recognised as a priority. We have more accessible services for support, and we understand more about the challenge we face, about how mental health is shaped by more than individual factors, and the role of inequality and features of our work and culture. Some of this requires our courage, being uncomfortable and questioning assumptions, seeing the strength in vulnerability and celebrating and not excluding our diversity, to find ways to make more space for our humanity. To have had impact in an area as important as veterinary mental health and suicide prevention is a privilege, but one that has not been achieved alone. This award represents the actions of those volunteers who have supported thousands of callers to Vet Life Helpline, human connection and holding hope. It celebrates the people who challenge discrimination, those who have taken part in research and trusted researchers like me with their truth, those who have supported me at all stages of my career. It celebrates those people who will go on to make the changes that we hope for. Through this work, there have been times of great sadness and adversity. But when times are hard and the task ahead feels overwhelming, we are not alone. Together we are stronger, and what seems daunting becomes a series of reasons and ways to do something and to help. I'm proud to be part of a profession working towards support, inclusion, equality and a place of real hope. Thank you for this opportunity to recognise those who have walked this path with me. We have a way to go, but together we can take each step with the strength we have when we support each other. Thank you.
The second recipient of the RCVS Impact Award this evening is veterinary surgeon Hannah Capon.
In nominating Hannah for this award, veterinary nurse Lindsay Tyndall described her as personable, warm and passionate, and with one goal, to improve the quality of life for dogs suffering from osteoarthritis. Here's a little more about Hannah and her online information service, Canine Arthritis Management.
Canine osteoarthritis isn't a fashionable or attention-grabbing disease, but a hugely commonplace condition that can cause a lot of pain and affects 80% of dogs over 8 years old. To tackle this, Hannah Capon runs and largely self-finances Canine Arthritis Management, or CAM, an online education and community service to raise awareness of this chronic disease and improve quality of care for dogs suffering from it. Through CAM, Hannah is changing the perceptions of veterinary professionals and dog owners alike, with a growing body of vets relying on and sharing her resources. This enables owners to gain safe and current information to help them achieve a long-term management plan, whilst also enhancing the vet and owner relationship.
Veterinary nurse Danielle Pountine, who supported Hannah's nomination, said about her, Hannah has become a forerunner and gold standard multimodal management of canine arthritis and chronic pain through her drive to improve the welfare of dogs. She truly deserves recognition and support from the RCVS to continue her amazing, unique and unrivaled CAM initiative. Hannah, I'm delighted to present you with the RCVS Impact Award. Congratulations, well done.
And here's Hannah herself with what this award means to her and her team.
Thank you so much for awarding me the RCVS Impact Award. This means the world to me, and it will mean the world to the CAM team. CAM, Canine Arthritis Management, is a team of volunteers, veterinary professionals that give up their time for free to try and help owners across the globe to manage their dog's arthritis better. I set it up in 2016 and it's been a massive passion of mine since. We really believe that we can change a global misunderstanding about identifying pain and acting on it. And we really believe that we will be able to improve the lives of dogs across the globe. So to the team, I want to say thank you. You are all legends in my heart. You put so much passion and time and commitment and absolute love into what you do. So I can't mention all of you because there is at least 30 people on the team at the moment, volunteers across the UK. Most of them have never met each other, but they work as a team providing the online service Canine Arthritis Management. You can find us at our website www.caninearthritis.co.uk. You can find us online, #CamArthritis or #YourDogMoreYears. So go find us. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and YouTube. We produce downloads and resources for owners, and we're trying to bridge the gap between the veterinary professional, the therapist and the owner to make sure that those dogs live a more comfortable life for as long as possible. So thank you, thank you, thank you. This means the world to me and it means the world to the team. Thanks so much.
Huge congratulations there to Hannah and her team of volunteers. We now move on to the RCVS Inspiration Award. This award is for a veterinary surgeon or veterinary nurse who has demonstrated the ability to inspire and enthuse others consistently throughout their career at the level of individuals, groups, or the profession as a whole. It recognises those who have gone above and beyond what may normally be expected from a professional colleague. This year, the RCVS Inspiration Award goes to veterinary surgeon Dr. Frida Scott Park.
Frida was nominated for this award by veterinary surgeon Paula Boyden, who said about her, Frida is not afraid to rise to a challenge and does so with good humour. Her ability to talk to anyone at any level in a balanced and objective way is reflected in the regard in which she is held, and that she has led two of the UK's key veterinary organisations as president of both the British Veterinary Association and the British Small Animal Veterinary Association. Here's a little more about Frida's important work in animal and human protection.
Dr. Frida Scott Park has been hugely instrumental in developing awareness and acknowledgement of the link between violence to animals and violence to people. As chair of the Links Group, Frida has developed a group of dedicated individuals from many different professions and has been the driving force behind the Links guidance document recognising abuse in animals and humans. Her dedication and tenacity means that her work's influence goes beyond the veterinary profession to include Crime Stoppers and the Welsh Government. Frida is also passionate about ensuring rural vets working in farming communities are supported in the challenging environments in which they work. Her astuteness in recognising vulnerabilities and addressing them makes her a true ambassador for the veterinary profession.
Kay Colquhoun, who supported Frida's nomination for this award, said, those who work alongside Frida value her considered thinking, quick wit and approachability. Her ability to communicate science in ways that are engaging and accessible has been particularly impressive and important with her work with the Links Group, where she brings together multiple agencies to create a better understanding of domestic and animal abuse. Frida, it gives me enormous pleasure today to present you with the RCVS Inspiration Award. Congratulations, very well done.
And here's Frida with a message for us from the banks of Loch Lomond.
To say I was delighted and indeed honoured to receive this award would be understating it. To be told in your citation that you've gone above and beyond what your colleagues would normally expect is indeed a huge honour. But behind me, there's a team of people who have helped me achieve my work. There have been so many people who have helped the Links Group to move forward, to establish links across the world. To my friends and colleagues, Paula Boyden, Wendy Snedden, and Vicky Betton, we've been a team for more than 10 years. And outside our inner circle, we've had others who have given of their time unstintingly. David Martin from Brownlow Vets, through his expert witness work for the RSPCA, to our colleagues in SSPCA and RSPCA, who frequently come and help us educate vets and the veterinary team in how important our role is in combating the cycle of violence. And to FVE, who took the message that vets have a role to play in domestic abuse right into the heart of Europe. And also to a very inspirational young police constable in North Wales, Mike Taggart. Mike and I have collaborated over the last 2 years, and together we are demonstrating the value of interagency working. So to all of those people, and to all of those I've not had time to mention, I'd like to pay tribute and to say thank you to them. This is for them too. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Frida. We now turn to the celebration of our final award of the evening, the RCVS Queen's Medal. Our patron, Her Majesty the Queen, has graciously given her permission for this honour to be named after her. The Queen's Medal is awarded to a veterinary surgeon for a lifetime of outstanding contributions to the profession, who has dedicated their career to working above and beyond the call of duty in the fields of veterinary medicine or science or related areas. It is the most prestigious honour that the college can bestow. I'm delighted to say that the recipient of this year's RCVS Queen's Medal is Dr. Mary Stewart.
Mary was nominated for this award by Professor Stuart Reid, who describes her as one of the unsung heroes of the veterinary profession, able to inspire and encourage all with whom she has contact. A little more unusually, Stuart also reports that Mary is a long-standing friend of Billy Connolly, who himself is a real fan. And who are we to disagree with the big un? Please join me in taking a look at Mary's pioneering work in understanding the human-animal bond and in her care and support for her colleagues and students.
A veterinarian graduating from Cornell in 1949, Dr. Mary Stewart has been a member of the RCVS since 1951 and spent the majority of her professional career at the University of Glasgow, where she played a key role in creating the modern vet school. Mary promoted ethics and animal welfare thinking in her students by exposing them to the paradoxes in the human and animal bond from farm to home. She laid the foundation for a very different educational approach, including introducing philosophy in her clinical teaching. However, Mary's contribution to the traumatic emotional issues surrounding death and euthanasia has had the greatest impact. Her seminal book, Companion Animal Death, and her guidance in Death of an Animal Friend remain as relevant today as when they were first published. She was one of the first in the academic world and veterinary profession to become qualified in person-centered counselling, bringing together her career that was epitomized by empathy and compassion.
Supporting Mary's nomination were Professor David Argyle and Professor Sandy Love, and I would just like to share with you this evening a couple of their thoughts about her. David said, "Mary has dedicated her life to the profession, the welfare of animals, and the welfare of staff and students. Her inspirational work and approach left an imprint on all of us who were lucky enough to be taught by her, and that has given us the grounding to develop as the professionals we are today." And Sandy wrote, "Mary is a living legend who has had a massive impact on generations of veterinary students at the University of Glasgow. Her major contribution to the veterinary profession is her foresight into issues such as resilience and well-being. Nowadays, all UK veterinary schools have teams of people to support students, but back then, we just had Mary providing any support through our own kindness. Mary, it was my honour and enormous pleasure to be taught by you and to be able to visit you and your daughter Katrina in your friend's garden recently to present you with the RCVS Queen's Medal in person, albeit from a constant distance of a good 2 metres. This evening, I know you're joined by not only your family, but also your many friends and colleagues from across the veterinary professions. So I'm just as delighted now to make this virtual presentation and award you with the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons Queen's Medal. Many, many congratulations.
How fantastic that Neil was able to see Mary there. And finally, here's Mary with a message for us, which is kindly read by her daughter Katrina.
Hi, I'm Katrina Jennings, Mary Stewart's daughter, and I'm speaking today on her behalf. Mary is delighted and honoured to receive this medal and wishes to thank Professor Stuart Reid, who nominated her for this award. She would also like to thank the RCVS who made it possible, and Neil Connell, Senior Vice President of the Royal College. She expresses her thanks to her colleagues for all their help and support over the years. Mary's veterinary career started when she graduated from Cornell University in 1949. Her first job was at Kentucky University, a stepping stone towards working in a local practice. Realising that no American equine practice would employ a woman at that time, Mary accepted a job in Northern Ireland. Unfortunately, the American degree was not recognised in the UK, and Sir William Wipers, founder of the present-day University of Glasgow Vet School, came to the rescue and offered her a place at Glasgow to study and qualify for the MRCVS. The family-like atmosphere of the vet school and the Scottish mountains convinced Mary that Scotland was her home. In her teaching career at Glasgow, Mary stressed the importance of animal welfare. She was equally concerned with the welfare of her students, being well aware of the challenges of the veterinary syllabus. In addition to animal welfare, the human-animal bond, and the importance of an empathetic attitude in euthanasia were to be major interests in Mary's career. Scientific understanding and clinical practice has made huge advances, but this should be hand in hand with the art of communicating with people, making ethical and moral decisions, and remembering the basis of compassionate practice. An event in Mary's past left a long-lasting impression on her. In the final year at Cornell, students would accompany vets on the ambulatory clinic. On this occasion, a bull was being dehorned. The bull started bellowing with pain as the vet began to saw his horn. Mary suggested the bull needed more anaesthetic. The vet promptly told her to go and sit in the car, saying, "This is what happens when you let women join the profession." Things indeed have come a long way since then. Thank you.
Things indeed have come a long way since then. That's truly outstanding. My warmest congratulations again, Mary, and to all our Knowledge, Mind Matters and RCVS award winners this evening. It is truly wonderful to have had the opportunity tonight to recognise and celebrate the fantastic contributions and inspiring achievements you each have made to animal health and welfare and to the veterinary professions both in the UK and around the world.
Thank you, Neil, and I'd like to add my congratulations to everyone too. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed our award ceremony this evening and hearing and watching a little more about all of our very worthy award winners. If during the course of the evening you've been sitting there thinking of someone you would like to, who you think would be deserving of one of our awards, but you haven't yet had a chance to say so, then we have some good news for you.
To round off our ceremonial proceedings this evening, I'm now delighted to formally open our awards round for 2021, full details of which you can find on our website. I'm particularly excited to announce that in addition to the awards you have seen this evening, we're launching 2 new awards for 2021, the RCVS Compassion Award and the RCVS Student Community Award. Reflecting a focus on compassion as a key tenet of our new strategic plan, the first of our new awards will be conferred upon a vet or a vet nurse at any stage of their career who has demonstrated genuine compassion towards their fellow professionals and or members of the animal-owning public over and above what might normally be expected of them. Meanwhile, the new Student Community Award will seek to recognise a veterinary or veterinary nursing student who has made a real effort to support their fellow students or their wider university or college community, or for contributions to the community local to their place of study. The nomination period for all awards is now open and will close on the 8th of January 2021. Do please visit our website for further details of all our awards and let us know whose name you would like to put forward.
Thank you, Neil. But now, to round off this evening of celebration and inspiration, I would shortly like to invite Neil to introduce our keynote speaker, Professor David Knott. Technology permitting, David will be joining us live this evening, which means he will also be able to take some questions at the end. So if you have a question, there are 3 ways to send it to us. Firstly, by email to events@rcvs.org.uk. Second, via Twitter using the hashtag RCVS Awards. And finally, the third way is to text RCVS to 60777, followed by your question. By all means, send your questions during the talk and we will do our best to read out as many as we can. Over to you, Neil.
Thank you, Lizzie. Professor David Knott is a renowned surgeon, a humanitarian and a personal hero of mine. During his more than 25-year medical career, he has volunteered his services to war and disaster zones across the globe. His recently published memoir, War Doctor, Surgery on the Front Line, is an international bestseller. He also established the David Knott Foundation, which aims to provide surgeons and medical professionals working in some of the world's most hostile environments with the skill and confidence they need to save lives. No one who listens to or reads about David's work with the conflicts in Afghanistan, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Darfur, Congo, Iraq, Yemen, Libya, Gaza, and Syria could fail to be moved, humbled, and horrified, but ultimately filled with a little hope by what he has witnessed and what he has achieved. He has experienced both the very worst but also the very best of what humanity has to offer, and I'm sure his speech will be equally inspiring. David, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and a very warm welcome.
Well, thanks very much, Niall. I hope you can hear me. I've been sitting here looking at your awards and I've been very humbled and I've enjoyed them a lot, and congratulations to everybody that's won. So I was asked to give a talk on resilience in the face of uncertainty and reflections of a doctor on the front line. So resilience, well, we all know that some people that seem to be able to cope with some really stressful situations and others that just fall apart. But what it is, and are you born resilient, or is it that you can acquire resilience? So let's just talk really about high risk situations. Risk is a combination of a specific hazard and the likelihood that it will occur. So risk really is the likelihood of something bad happening. And if that bad thing does happen to you, what are the consequences? Now it's quite interesting that the risk assessment matrix. And I put this down because it's maybe wondering why I'm talking about this, but it's been used by the governments, it's been used by NASA, it's been used by banks, it's been used by all major companies to assess risk. So the risk is the likelihood of something happening and the consequence of it happening. So if I was to cross a road, for example, what's my likelihood of being hit by that cyclist? Well, I would say fairly minimal. So my risk is fairly low in the green area. Now, what's my risk if I'm crossing a road and there are multiple cyclists? Well, it's remote, and if I do get hit by one, probably, again, minimal. But what happens if I cross a road and get hit by a van? What's the risk of that happening to me? Well, it's remote, but if it does hit me, then it's catastrophic. And what's the risk of me crossing a road with multiple lorries? Well, probably frequent. The likelihood of being hit by one of them is quite frequent, I would suggest, and the results, again, catastrophic. So here I am climbing, ice climbing in Canada, held by a couple of really, what is the risk to me? Well, if that little knot was there and I had an instructor, it's remote, but if something did happen, maybe I'll be in the yellow, or if the knot came apart, then certainly I would be in the green. It'd be catastrophic. And it's very funny, after a particularly enjoyable experience, your brain is awash with dopamine, and thrill seekers are born with a genetic mutation of DR2 or DRD4 on chromosome 11 and have fewer dopamine receptors and therefore need more dopamine to achieve the same sensations of pleasure. And that's the reason why they think that people are thrill seekers. And 30% of those people 30% of thrill seekers have genetic mutations. But self-preservation is something really important, and putting yourself in harm's way goes against our instinct and constitutes a necessary risk. Now, some people would think to myself, well, I'm just a surgeon. But also I think it's important that we have hobbies in life. And I have a significant aviation hobby. I'm also a flying instructor. And here I am with one of my students.
Here we are, 4,000 feet, and I'm going to show you how to store an airplane. What do you think about that? I'm a bit apprehensive about it because we're no longer flying. I mean, it makes you think that the airplane's not flying, and that's a bit scary. Okay, let me show you how to store an airplane, so hopefully you won't find it as scary. So you're worried about the risk of doing this, are you? Yeah, absolutely. It seems quite risky to me. I suppose we're at 4,000 feet, but on the other hand, we're not flying, but we're still. Take the power right off. I'm going to hold it at 4,000 feet. You'll notice the airspeed indicator is getting less and less. You'll hear that you've got a stall warner going off now. We get some light buffet going on, and there we go, there we go, there we go. There's the heavy buffet, and I guess all we're going to do is unstore the wings by lowering the nose and pushing the control column slightly forward. That's all you do to unstore the wings. So it's important to know how to get out of the spin. So it's full opposite rudder, and then centralize the controls, and then climb away. Full right rudder. Doesn't want to. Full right. Don't do anything with the ailerons. Full right rudder. There you go, you're going down. 1,000 feet per minute. Okay, full left rudder, full left rudder. Don't rudder at that, full left rudder. Centralise controls. Okay, start climbing away in that full power.
So really, to preserve yourself, really, you've got to have full confidence in the person that you are with. But there are some people who the fear of taking risks is sometimes too high. And when Franklin D. Roosevelt raised his hand to take the oath that would make him the 32nd president of the United States, fear had settled like a thick grey fog across Washington. They were all in the way, they were all in a very bottom of a deep depression.
So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance.
Now, by saying this, FDR was telling the American people that their fear was making things worse. By running to the banks and taking their money out of the banks was causing more damage to the economy. And he said things that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Well, like everything in life, it's either been said or done before. And Michel de Montaigne was one of the most significant philosophers of the French Renaissance. He had an excessive fear of death and made it almost impossible for him to enjoy living. Indeed, it was him who coined the term, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. This was partly the result of a fashion at the time which stated some of the ancient philosophers that the best way to be at ease about your mortality was to think about it constantly. Dwell on your own death every day, went the theory, and you'll become so used to it that the idea that it cannot scare you when it arrives in reality. Now, not surprisingly, the results could be quite the opposite. Brooding on death could make the fear worse, not better. That was certainly what Montaigne found when he tried it. It did not help as he entered his 30s. He suffered from a series of bereavements. His best friend, Etienne de Boîté, died in the plague in 1563. Next, his father died of a kidney stone attack. Then his younger brother suffered a fatal hemorrhage after being hit on the head by a tennis ball. He wrote, "How can we possibly rid ourselves of the thought of death and the idea that every moment is gripping us by the throat?" Fortunately, at around the same time, he had a near-death experience of his own, and it was what he needed to release him from this fear. During his near-death experience, after falling from his horse, he felt clouds of pure pleasure. It was like drifting off to sleep, but even more sweet and luxurious. The pleasure faded only when he returned fully to consciousness and felt the pain of his bruises. As he recuperated, he reflected on his experiences and deduced that death must hold very little to be scared of. He felt that however distraught we look at others dying, those dying feel ultimate tranquility. Thus, if we have spent our life preparing to meet death like an enemy on the battlefield, we have been wasting our time, as Montaigne now put it, with a superb flourish of nonchalance. Don't bother your heart about it. And so it was for me in 1993, when I was sitting in the back of this ambulance, transporting a patient from a hospital in the city centre in Sarajevo to the Kosovo hospital, where we had to pass through Sniper's Alley. And as we did so, came under a barrage of shots from the Serbs in the hills. We had only gone about 500 meters from the front door of the hospital. The porter in the passenger seat died immediately. The ambulance driver took a soft tissue injury to his shoulder. I did not know whether I had been hit or not. The whole incident lasted about a minute or so before the driver slammed the car into reverse. I tried to resuscitate the porter, but he was dead, and I operated on the driver shortly afterwards. A few hours later, I was elevated to a higher plane, one that I've never experienced again. It was absolute pure elation and joy, and not hysteria. The feeling of tranquility was an out-of-body experience, very similar to what Michel de Montaigne was describing. We all knew the dangers of leaving that hospital, but I took a risk that nearly cost me my life. From that moment, I felt I was a different person. I felt I could tackle anything or anybody, and spent the next 25 years fueling my need for this adventure. I suppose you could say that it's there in top red corner. Anyway, from about 1993 onwards, I spent the next 20 years or so, on average, 6 weeks a year in various war zones, fueling my need. Was it dopamine? I don't know, but the excitement I felt when another mission was imminent was palpable. This is me in Aleppo, Syria in 2013. I arrived in Aleppo 1 week following the chemical weapons attack outside Damascus, killing 1,000 people. And as my friend Hamish de Bretton Gordon quoted, fear is as much a part of chemical weapons efficiency as their killing properties. It's the indiscriminate nature of chemical weapons, their unseen nature and horrific way they kill you, the drowning that cause fear. And it's quite interesting, in Aleppo in 2013, we had these boards outside on the roads telling us what happens if we do get a chemical weapon attack. How very similar to this year, when we had the same sort of boards around us with this invisible enemy, which affected us very similar to the fear that we had in catching this virus. And of course, this is in 2016 in Aleppo, and I was there during a chlorine attack when chlorine would affect the children. And when you inhaled, the chlorine would mix with the water and form hydrochloric acid, and this is the effect. It's very often that when things are happening like this, people look at me and say, well, you're a war doctor. What's it like fighting COVID-19? And this is me again during the COVID-19 crisis, working in the intensive care unit. And I did feel it was like very similar. You didn't know what was going to happen. Since 2016, my wife and I founded the David Knott Foundation, which is a foundation which pays for surgeons to come from all over the world to the Royal College of Surgeons for humanitarian training in all the specialties that is necessary to know when you're a conflict and catastrophe surgeon working on your own, with none of the investigatory tools we had in the First World, and with much worse injuries that you see when working in the major trauma centres in London. We also take the course to the front line, and you can see here the blue icons where we have taken the 5-day course over the past 4 years or so. This is in northern Yemen in January this year, a country now completely devastated by COVID. And this is Rebecca Troller, one of my registrars who worked on the trauma unit, teaching on Heston, a full body simulator, which we take all over the world. Getting to Hajjah, northern Yemen, was not easy. The terrain was difficult, and going through around 10 checkpoints with very heavy armed guards. The risk of kidnap is very high, but the rewards are enormous. Developing friendships and leaving a legacy and hope and friendship, never mind the training, is something that you can't cultivate from a distance. The only real risk we had was that the leader of the Al-Houthi regime wanted to take Heston, and I had quite a sleepless night guarding him in my room, hearing that armed men were going to come and take him away. However, that is nothing compared to the risks I took when I went to Aleppo in 2013, 14, and 16. There's no doubt that risk and trust are inexorably linked. And again, I'm sure your veterinary surgery, as well with your patients and their carers, have the same respect for you with regards to risk perception, because they trust you. They trust you a lot. And again, when in the early 2000s, when I was diving off the coast of Maldives, I was stung by a box jellyfish and almost died. And again, put my trust in doctors to perform a cardiac ablation treatment, which when I was having it, they said, well, you know, you've got a 10% mortality, David, but you just got to trust people sometimes. Again, you've got to trust people when you're going into a war zone. Here am I sitting in the back of this transporter, going across 10 or so 12 ISIS checkpoints, getting through into Aleppo. A very scary moment, but you've got to trust people that are with you to do this. Unfortunately, the journalist who was called Anthony Lloyd, his people he trusted double-crossed him, and he was kidnapped during this time. So you really have to trust people. 2014 in Aleppo was probably the most dangerous place I've ever been to. Barrel bombs are being dropped, clouds of fumes of concrete dust would come about, and rockets were raining down. We got caught up with a Syrian jet that was circling over us and saw us. Again, very lucky to escape from that. We worked because it was so dangerous, we worked in underground hospitals, and this is one of the underground hospitals.
we can see that on the inside the building. We can see inside the
last year had full of patients. Yeah. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 patients, and I remember having operated on quite a few of them last year. And the barrel bomb hit the hospital, blew out the windows, and killed how many patients?
4 killed.
4 killed,
and about 10 injured.
And 10 injured with shrapnel and everything else. So you can see the devastation is enormous and very shocking. Interesting to have a look at this down here. You can see where the rocket came down the mosque here and totally and utterly destroyed the building. This is where we used to have our breakfast. And interesting. And this is me going into that underground hospital. And a few months later, what happened was that because there were jets flying around all the time, to try and camouflage it slightly, lots of pot plants were put there. And this is a devastating problem that happened. One of the jets was flying around, and underneath that green gate was our operating theatre. And this is what happened. So there's a jet now flying around the top, low level, and this is a hospital. And of course, the United Nations and Geneva Conventions and everybody, the international humanitarian law states that hospitals should not be attacked, whether they're in war zones or anywhere in the world. They should be protected by the Geneva Convention. This gentleman's coming in and gets completely blown up. So, of course, hospitals should function in times of war. And I've been really bandering on about, how hospitals should always be protected. Having taken all these risks put me in a very special position, because when it came to trying to help my doctors who were trapped in Aleppo under the siege in 2016, we felt they were all going to be killed. And I sort of went on an overdrive to try and help them and spoke on every news outlet that I could get on.
The doctors in Aleppo are also scared about sending their patients up the road. They don't know where they're going to go. The patients themselves are very scared because they need a safe access to a neutral hospital in the north, and they need to be able to get there. The problem is that they're worried that because of the Syrian bombing, the Russian bombing, that if they go up one of these corridors, the so-called safe corridor, they're going to be taken to a Syrian hospital, they're going to be taken to some sort of camp, and they're not going to get the access and care that they need. And when we talk about patients, I mean, it's a range of people, presumably from fighters through to kids. Well, most of the people I ever deal with are civilians, to be honest with you. And in fact, those civilians are really badly injured. When I was in this northern hospital last week, we dealt with so many injuries of people with massive open wounds that are just festering at home because there's no beds for them in the hospitals. And that's just in the north, never mind Aleppo. I reckon that there's probably around 5,000 people stuck there under rubble, under terrible situations that need urgent surgical care. 5,000 people needing surgical care. I would think so. I would estimate that. The trouble is that they're in hospitals. There's only about 16 or 17 doctors left now. There was 25, I think, about a month or so ago. There's 16 left now. And there's 250,000 people that they're having to deal with. Never mind the outpatients, never mind everything else. Somebody needs to really get a grip.
And with the help of the SPCO, I was able to talk to the big players in the war to try and allow the safe evacuation of all the doctors and around 150,000 people. And the way we did that was for me to ask for a photo of all the orphan children in Aleppo that were hiding in cellars in sub-zero temperatures and tweet it around the world. And this is that picture that was tweeted around the world. And at the time, I would go to the Russian embassy on a weekly basis, to the consul and the ambassador, having very difficult diplomatic relations, wondering whether I was going to having a huge risk drinking the coffee that was made for me in the Russian embassy. But let's just go back to the title of this talk. I've almost finished. It's called Resilience. And was I born with it? The answer is no. I was a shy lonely little boy who as a teenager failed his A-levels and was laughed at by those who went to university. But I learned from that mistake in not studying. It made me stronger and more resilient. Why did I take so many risks in war zones? And why did I keep going back? It was definitely a behavioral change, which meant me engaging in something meaningful. It's a subtle difference, but important distinction. But by doing something for the joy it brings, like helping others in times of need, as opposed to it lowering the stress, can allow your attention to focus more on the meaningful pursuit, and the more attention and the more your attention is on the meaningful pursuit, the less it focuses on risk and stress. So it was an enormous risk for me to write this book. And of course, many doctors have said to me, how did you get away by writing a book like this? Well, the reason is because you've got to be honest with everything you write, and that's the facts, and that's it really. But during the COVID crisis, we obviously cannot travel, so we held weekly webinars for surgeons, at around 80 surgeons from around the world, and in fact, what we talked about, a lot of it was their worry about the COVID crisis that was happening. So I decided to write a paper about their problems worrying about the COVID crisis in people affected by conflict and humanitarian resources. And this is because we've developed so many friends around the world that I'm able to talk to them on webcams and discuss things with them. And after the Lancet article came out at midday, I got a call from Newsnight to ask if I would appear on the show. Now, that's an enormous risk to take, because in the paper, I had criticized the government. Not a good thing to do, perhaps, but the risk to myself would be too much if I was to appear. But I've learned that the path of resilience is via meaningful pursuit and taking the challenge to protect all those doctors and their patients that I was worried about.
Well, as we end the week with the government hailing the testing target and preparations being made to get the country back to work, there is a stark reminder from David Knott, the renowned war zone doctor who most recently worked in northern Syria, that there are still places in the world, in the developing world, where the coronavirus is still to strike, but strike it surely will. He says that if we do nothing, it will cause nothing short of a total catastrophe. Writing in this week's edition of The Lancet, he explains that for the up to 70 million refugees living in unsanitary and cramped conditions, the word lockdown is meaningless. And the pandemic will have an even more devastating impact. I'll be speaking to him in just a moment, but first, let's get a sense of his work.
For the past 25 years or so, I have volunteered to work in war zones and various catastrophe areas, but I certainly didn't volunteer to come and work in the pandemic, which we find ourselves working in at the moment. The NHS is a fantastic organisation to work in, and we all take pride in what we do. But we didn't sign up also to deal with almost mass casualties on a daily basis.
David Knott has been an NHS doctor for 40 years, and through his work in some of the most dangerous war zones in the globe for the past 25, he's become world-renowned. And it was 4 years ago, on his return from Aleppo, that he found himself unable to speak during a lunch with the Queen at Buckingham Palace. She sensed her guest was seriously traumatised, as he recalled when he was on desert island discs.
She got one of the biscuits and she broke it in two and said, okay, why don't we feed the dogs? And so for 20 minutes, the Queen and I, during this lunch, just fed the dogs. And she did it because she knew that I was so seriously traumatized.
Now he's working on the COVID frontline, retraining in an intensive care unit in London. But he still has his eyes on war-torn countries most at risk of the virus, and warns about what he sees as our failure to engage with the stateless and impoverished in countries like Syria and Sudan. If we do not raise our heads to help them, they'll flee the camps of the Middle East and instead come to Europe carrying infection with them. We need a world leader, he says, to step up and act now to stop the virus in its tracks. Well, David Knott joins me live. Good evening. David Knott, first of all, as we've explained, you have worked in some of the most hellish areas of the world on some dreadful injuries. But I wonder now, working in a COVID hospital, in a way, is there a comparison you can make?
Yes, there is. I mean, we all stepped up to the mark when the COVID crisis began.
And I was almost surprised, really, how it really was like a mass casualty event. In war, you get mass casualties, and sometimes it overburdens your hospital, and you can't deal with them all, and you have to triage. What we were feeling at the time was that perhaps the same thing was going to happen, that there's going to be a mass casualty event. So we all basically retrained, and it was an amazing thing to do, really. We took our normal hats off of surgery and whatever, and became normal doctors, and were trained by the intensivists how to look at ventilators and prone patients, turn them on the intensive care unit. And I just stepped up to the mark like everybody else did.
Well, I know that in the Lancet article, you are critical of the government's initial response. Where do you think the problem lay?
Well, I have the paper in front of me, actually. It was a paper written from Hong Kong with Professor Wu, and his final line in his paper, which was published on the 30th of January 2020, says large cities overseas with close transport links to China could also become outbreak epicenters unless substantial public health interventions at both the population and personal levels are implemented immediately. Well, that was in January the 30th. I'm not blaming anybody at all, but I don't quite really understand why a scientific or from an epidemiological standpoint, why there seemed to be nobody that really picked up this and really waved this red flag, because we had 4 weeks really of everybody just shrugging their shoulders, thinking it was all going to go away and there was nothing to worry about.
So here we are, you've been working unusually in a way with the full panoply of the NHS. Often you have very rudimentary medical equipment and indeed help. But you're very, very concerned about the impact still yet to hit on both refugee camps and areas of other settlements, particularly in developing world.
Very much so. I mean, we had a massive amount of infrastructure. We had equipment, we had ventilators, we had nursing staff, we had doctors. And when you think about the results that we had, this disease is so virulent, it's so dangerous and so pathogenic, and so it causes such high mortality that results recently that have been published from the Intensive Care Society have shown that 65% of patients that in the best hands possible died. And if you had another kidney problem or something on top of that, then you had an 80% chance of dying on a ventilator.
Yes, sorry, I just want to ask you, I mean, the scenario you're suggesting is that we are by the very fact that we are so inward looking, we have actually got another crisis on the global doorstep.
Absolutely. If you look at David Miliband and you look at his International Rescue Committee, he did some modelling based on the Imperial College at WHO. And in 34 fragile countries, he's shown that in the next few weeks, if we don't do anything, 500 million or 1 billion people will become infected. And of that, 3 million will possibly die. And that is in the
time I'm going to go on. As you could see, when I was chatting away there, my head was bobbing all over the place. And the reason why is because I had to get it right. I couldn't afford to get it wrong on Newsnight. And if you're ever invited to go onto Newsnight, what I would suggest is that you write a lot of notes, because one flying instructor told me once that, excuse my French, but poor planning produces piss poor performance. And I know my brain is liable to stop functioning under enormous stress. So this is what I was looking at when I was looking at my computer. But very interestingly enough, about a few days later, I had a message back from 10 Downing Street saying, would you be able to talk about this to 10 Downing Street? And of course I did, and then came up with the idea of having global nightingales and also oxygen treatment for patients abroad. Because at the moment, what really gets to me is that big companies make millions and millions of pounds sending these oxygen cylinders to Africa, and these poor people have to buy this, and there's no possibility of using any oxygen concentrators. Now, the oxygen concentrators that this government have paid at the moment produce very poor amounts of litres per minute, a maximum 1 litre per minute. But for a COVID patient, you need about 5 litres per minute. So I went back to the government and I went back to Imperial College and I said, can you build me an oxygen concentrator that will have sustainable power, which is solar powered and impurity free, and produce 5 litres of oxygen? So we've been working on this, and I wrote about 20 emails to the government saying, come on, give us the money. And a couple of weeks ago, I went on Today program. I've almost come to an end, so don't worry. Today program just to highlight this.
95% oxygen by removing the nitrogen as well. You need for the government. They've told us that they are working to support the health response in vulnerable countries, including the supply of critical equipment, and have been in discussion with you about this. So what do you need them to do now? Well, I think they need to come up with the goods, really, to be really honest with you. We're trying to create, constantly badgering the UK government, in particular DFID, to create a package of care called the Global Nightingale, which is really the promotion on the Global Britain Initiative. And what they really need to do is to come up with the goods now, come up with the funding for us to develop this concentrator, which is lacking at the moment.
Anyway, lo and behold, after that Radio 4 Today program, I got a message back from 10 Downing Street, which then went to the Department of International Health Development and said, okay, we'll give you the 900,000 to try and support this. So do you know that what astronauts report as one of the most stressful things they deal with up in space? Is it a power failure? Is it everything else? No, it's how their family and kids are doing back on Earth. And the resilience for extreme risk that I once had cannot possibly continue, having become Molly and Elizabeth's dad. But I still have so much fire in my belly to stand up for those less fortunate than us, and to thrive and to leave a legacy of my 30 years of humanitarian work by continuing to teach those on the front line. Go. Right, ready, stop. Okay, stay there. There's my couple of risk takers. And thank you very much for listening to me. I'm sorry I've gone on a bit.
David, wow. Thank you very much indeed for what was a truly remarkable account of your work. Your words and your insights yielded from the valorous and mad paths you've taken, including many most challenging human circumstances on our planet, are humbling. You are an extraordinary person. Thank you very much. Lizzie, do we have any questions for David?
We do indeed, Neil. Thank you very much, David. We just have one or two for you. The first one that I've got here is, how do you deal with compassion fatigue and post-traumatic stress disorder, and has it affected your personal life?
Yes, it has, and in fact, it is a big problem, and I learned to sort of recognize it over the years that when I'd come back from some places, I was really not quite the same person, and it usually takes about 3 months to get over it. But I think the big problem, what I really suffered badly, was being in Aleppo in 2014, when we had all the beheadings and things from ISIS with all those Western journalists. That really sent me over the top, because I felt that I was the only Westerner in Aleppo, and they were very close by, and all it needed was a telephone call or something like that, and I'd get whisked away. That was probably the most stressful moment, and that's why I think I just lost it. You know, when I went to Buckingham Palace, I was really not in there at all. And when I look back on it now, you know, I became psychotic after that. And good job I didn't become psychotic when I was having lunch with the Queen, but I wasn't far off. So yes.
I should imagine if you find yourself feeding the corgis with the Queen, you might think you have gone a bit psychotic, but it sounds like an interesting experience.
That's true.
Another question for you is it possible to run out of resilience?
I don't think resilience is something that I think it's not what you have. You're not born with it, and you develop it, and it's a passion that you have. And sometimes, if you really want something at the end of something, you will go and get it. And it's also a part of being very determined, and you're determined to get what you want. But it's not a determination for yourself; it's a determination for others. And I think that's the big difference in resilience.
if you're resilient, it's not a personal thing. It's for other people, and that makes you far more resilient to take things rather than to be determined. Because most people are determined; they're determined for themselves, but to be resilient, you're determined for others. And I think that's what resilience is all about.
Thank you. I've got one here which has come through on my phone, so I'm just going to read it to you. It says, this is a technical question. In your book, War Doctor, you describe, not going to be able to say this right, a thoracotomy technique. Is that right? Which is like opening the thorax, like the bonnet of a car. The veterinary surgeon says, this procedure, to my knowledge, is unheard of in veterinary medicine. With this technique, where do you incise the diaphragm to close the defect? I hope that makes more sense to you than it does to me.
Yes. So what you do is you, if I can show on myself here. So if you have one nipple on this side and another nipple on the other, you make an incision going across underneath the nipple, getting to the sternum, about the 5th intercostal space, and you go across to the other side, and then you lift up the chest like a car bonnet, and you can see the heart and both lungs on either side. And that's called a clamshell maneuver. And it's a very quick access. And so how to close it, you just close the sternum using steel or ethibond sutures to close the sternum. And that's all you need sometimes. A couple of stitches on the intercostals can sometimes cause trouble in children because they may end up growing with a scoliosis. So be careful about even repairing the ribs. As long as you repair the sternum, that's the most important thing. And maybe, I don't know whether you can try it on animals, but it certainly works on humans.
Excellent, thank you. And I think we've got time for just one more. So the question is, do you have any inward sayings or phrases that you refer to in difficult situations? And the person asking the question says that one of his is, no day lasts forever.
Well, mine is, one day, I suppose that what I always think about when things are going badly wrong is that later in the day I shall be in bed under my duvet, whatever happens. So very similar to his as well, I think, really.
That's a good note to end on. I think as we're all ending up under our duvet. So Neil, I'll hand back to you, but thank you very much, David, for a wonderful talk and being so generous with your time as well.
Yes, thank you very much, David. That was absolutely fantastic. And thank you for that explanation of thoracotomy. The bit in the book that really amazed me was the 4-quarter amputation in the young lad. I just thought that was mind-blowing. But thank you so much. I'd just like to thank you for joining us this evening and giving us a truly, truly fascinating talk. Thank you very much indeed. So now, ladies and gentlemen, it falls to me to draw our evening to a close. Thank you all so much for joining us for our first ever online awards ceremony. It has been a true honour for me to present our awards to such fantastic folk tonight, and I hope you found their stories as fascinating and as inspirational as I have. I'm only sorry that we haven't all been able to meet up in person as usual. Please do remember to nominate whomever you think deserves to be recognised and celebrated next year with an RCVS Knowledge or Mind Matters Award for their work, dedication and achievements. And thank you also to our nominations committee who have had the unenviable task of choosing tonight's winners from an extremely impressive field of nominees. And to our amazing communications team, Ian Holloway, Deborah Rowlanes and Joanne Stetzel for expertly turning our normal live event into such an engaging virtual one. I very much look forward to seeing you at Royal College Day next year, when RCVS President Mandisa Green will have the honour of presenting our awards for 2021, hopefully face to face. In the meantime, please do stay safe and well, and from this, my very own pyramid stage, thank you all and good night.
Thank you.